Chapter 1. The room was silent except for the low hum of machinery. On the holotable in the center of the chamber, a projection of Earth rotated slowly, surrounded by a dense ring of red markers. Alien ships. Lieutenant Commander Elise Carter stood at the edge of the table, her jaw tight and her hands clenched behind her back. "Ladies and gentlemen," the voice of Overseer Zraltok boomed from a broadcast screen at the far end of the room. His scaled visage filled the display, eyes glowing a cold amber. "You have one Earth day to surrender. Refuse, and we will burn your world to ash. There is no victory for you, only the mercy we extend." The transmission ended with a flicker, plunging the war room into an oppressive silence. "We're out of options." Admiral Kwan's voice was low, his tone carrying the weight of 1,000 calculations. He leaned on the table, his weathered face etched with exhaustion. "Their fleet outnumbers us 50-1. Even with the orbital defenses, we can't hold them off. We have to consider their terms." No, Elise's voice cut through the room like a blade. All eyes turned to her, some skeptical, others desperate for hope. "If we surrender, we lose more than our freedom. We lose who we are." "You have a plan, Commander Carter?" General Monroe, a stout man with a voice as gruff as his demeanor, arched an eyebrow. "Because unless you've figured out how to turn scrap metal into warships, we're listening to ghosts here." "I do." Elise stepped forward, her boots echoing against the steel floor. With a gesture, she activated the holotable, overlaying Earth's defenses with the enemy's positions. The aliens rely on centralized command. They're efficient, but rigid. We've studied their battle doctrine. They don't adapt well to chaos. That's where we thrive. She tapped a sequence, zooming in on a cluster of alien ships. They won't expect guerrilla tactics on a galactic scale. We don't fight their war. We make them fight ours. Admiral Kwan straightened, his brow furrowed. "Elise, this isn't a board game. Lives are at stake." "It's the only way to win," Elise pressed. "We don't need to beat their entire fleet. We just need to disrupt them long enough to force a stalemate. Take out their communications, sow confusion, and turn their strength into a liability." The room buzzed with quiet murmurs. General Monroe stroked his chin, his skepticism softening. Finally, Kwan exhaled deeply, his shoulders slumping. "Fine. You have one shot. What's your first move?" Elise's plan began within the hour. At a classified launch site buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, her team gathered. The chamber smelled of ozone and cold metal, the air thick with tension. "We've trained for this," she began, pacing in front of the team. Her voice was firm, but her eyes betrayed the gravity of the mission. "The aliens expect us to defend Earth's orbit, but we're taking the fight to them. We'll deploy cloaked drones to infiltrate their fleet and disable their comm relays. Without coordination, their fleet is vulnerable." Among the team was Corporal Diaz, a sharp-eyed engineer who had a knack for improvisation. He raised a hand. "Commander, what happens if we're caught?" "Their sensors could pick up anomalies." "They might," Elise admitted. "But if we're caught, it's over anyway. Our job is to make sure they don't see us coming. This mission isn't about survival. It's about giving Earth a chance." The team nodded, though the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. The mission began under the cover of Earth's shadow, the drones launching silently from concealed platforms. In the cockpit of the command shuttle, Elise monitored the operation. Through her headset, the voices of her team crackled as they guided the drones toward their targets. "Drone Alpha approaching target. ETA 30 seconds. The vastness of space yawned around them, the alien fleet a constellation of silver and crimson, humming with energy. Each ship was a fortress, bristling with weapons that could vaporize cities. "Drone Bravo in position," Diaz reported. His voice was calm, but Elise caught the faint tremor beneath it. "Stand by," she ordered. Her fingers hovered over the controls, her heart pounding in her chest. The moment stretched, the silence of space amplifying every second. "Now!" The drones activated in unison, releasing electromagnetic pulses that rippled through the alien fleet. One by one, their lights dimmed, communications faltering. On the holoscreen, the alien ships flickered like dying stars. "Targets disrupted," Diaz confirmed. We're clear for extraction. But then alarms blared. Elise's blood ran cold. They've spotted us, one of the operators shouted. Through the viewport, a sleek alien interceptor closed in, its weapons glowing ominously. Evasive maneuvers. Elise barked, gripping the console. The shuttle lurched, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma fire. Commander, Diaz called, we can't outrun them. Elise's mind raced. Every instinct screamed to flee, but then she saw it, a cluster of asteroids nearby. Head for the field, she ordered. We'll lose them in the debris. The shuttle dove into the asteroid field, weaving through the jagged rocks. The alien ship pursued, its weapons carving molten trails through the void. Inside the shuttle, sparks flew as the hull groaned under the stress. Brace for impact. The shuttle clipped an asteroid, spinning out of control. Elise gritted her teeth, forcing the ship back on course. The alien vessel followed, but its larger size made navigation difficult. Diaz deployed the drone's decoys. Now! Diaz activated the decoys, which scattered, each emitting a signature identical to the shuttle's. Confused, the alien ship hesitated, firing at the false targets. We're clear, Elise breathed as the interceptor vanished from their sensors. The shuttle emerged from the asteroid field, battered but intact. Behind them, the alien fleet was in chaos, their communications fractured. Elise leaned back in her seat, exhaling deeply. This is just the beginning, she said, more to herself than anyone else. And in the void beyond, Overseer Zraltok watched the disruption unfold, his amber eyes narrowing. So, the primitives have claws after all, he muttered. The war had begun. Chapter 2. The command center buzzed with frantic energy. Screens displayed feeds of the alien fleet, which now drifted with fractured formation and darkened sections. Elise Carter stood at the console, her eyes scanning lines of data as analysts fed her updates. Their comms are in disarray, Lieutenant Pierce reported, his voice tight with suppressed excitement. Multiple sectors reporting command disruptions. It's working, Commander. Elise nodded but kept her focus on the schematics flickering before her. The initial victory had been crucial, but she knew better than to celebrate. What's their response? Deploying scouts to locate the source of interference, Pierce replied. They're probing orbital positions, but so far, they haven't identified us. Admiral Kwan entered, his presence imposing as ever. Carter, good work out there. But we both know they'll adapt. What's the next move? Elise straightened. We hit their supply lines. Their fleet can't sustain prolonged engagements without replenishment, and their refueling stations are vulnerable. If we take them out, we buy time for Earth's defenses to regroup. Kwan's expression was unreadable. He gestured toward a map of the solar system displayed on the central holodable. Which stations are you targeting? Station Theta 8 near Saturn's orbit, Elise answered. It's heavily guarded, but it's a critical node for their supply chain. If we cripple it, they'll be forced to pull back. Kwan nodded slowly. You've got my approval, but this is high risk. We can't afford another close call like last time. In the hangar, the strike team prepared for their mission. The air smelled of hydraulic fluid and ozone, punctuated by the hiss of pressurized systems. Corporal Diaz adjusted the straps on his tactical harness, his expression grim. You ever wonder why it's always us? He muttered to Sergeant Elena Varga, the team's demolitions expert. Varga smirked as she packed charges into her satchel. Because we're the best, Diaz. And Carter knows it. Diaz gave a dry chuckle. Best at getting shot at? Maybe. Elise entered, her presence commanding immediate attention. Listen up. This mission isn't just about blowing things up. It's about sending a message. They think we're predictable, primitive. Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like under pressure. She glanced at Diaz. You're leading drone deployment. Timing is everything. 1 second off and we're toast. Diaz nodded, swallowing his nerves. Understood, Commander. The shuttle approached Saturn under the cover of its icy rings, the glittering debris providing natural camouflage. Elise sat in the cockpit, monitoring the alien station through long-range scanners. Station Theta 8 in sight, she said. The facility was a massive angular structure, bristling with weaponry and surrounded by smaller escort vessels. Activate cloak. Maintain radio silence. The team's breathing was audible in the tight quarters, every creak of the shuttle magnified in the silence. As they drew closer, Diaz launched a squad of micro-drones, their tiny engines humming faintly before disappearing into the void. "Drones online," he whispered, relaying visual feed. The drones darted between the station's defenses, scanning for weak points. Through the viewport, the station loomed larger, its surface crawling with activity. "Varga, you're up," Elise said. Varga moved to the airlock, her movements precise as she prepared to exit. "Placing charges on the fuel lines will trigger a chain reaction. We won't need a second attempt." "Good," Elise replied. "Because there won't be one." The shuttle drifted closer, and Varga slipped out, tethered by a magnetic line. The void swallowed her figure, leaving only her calm feed to confirm her progress. Inside the station, Overseer Zraltok paced. His sleek armor reflected the sterile glow of the control room, his subordinates hastily relaying status reports. "Human interference persists," one officer said, his voice trembling. "Our scouts have located anomalies near Saturn." Zraltok's amber eyes narrowed. "Dispatch reinforcements. The humans are scavengers, clinging to scraps of hope. Crush them, and this war will end." As the officer turned to obey, Zraltok stared at the holographic display of Earth. "They will learn the price of defiance." "Charges set." Varga's voice crackled through Elise's headset. "Good," Elise replied. "Return to the shuttle, but keep a low profile." "Diaz, prepare the decoys." Diaz activated the drone's secondary function. Each emitted a signature identical to the shuttle's, creating a swarm of false targets. "Decoys deployed," he confirmed. Elise smiled grimly. "Light it up, Varga." The charges detonated with a blinding flash. Through the viewport, the station erupted, fire and debris scattering in every direction. The shockwave rippled through space, catching one of the escort ships and tearing it apart. "Direct hit," Diaz cheered. But their celebration was short-lived. The sensors blared as multiple alien ships entered the sector. "We've got company," Elise said, her voice icy. "Diaz, engage evasive protocols." "Everyone, hold on." The shuttle banked sharply, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. Decoys scattered, confusing the alien targeting systems, but the reinforcements were relentless. "They're cutting off our escape," Vargas shouted. Elise's mind raced. They were outgunned, outnumbered, but not out of options. "Diaz, redirect the decoys toward the debris field. Use the station's wreckage as cover." The shuttle wove through the chaos, dodging debris and plasma fire. The decoys led the alien ships astray, giving the team a narrow window. "Entering FTL corridor," Diaz announced, his hands trembling on the controls. The shuttle lurched as it accelerated, stars blurring into streaks of light. For a moment, the tension eased. "We did it," Varga breathed, slumping into her seat. Elise's gaze remained fixed on the viewport. "This was just one battle," she said. "They'll hit back harder. But now, they know what we're capable of." In the darkness of space, Zraltok stood before a hologram of the destroyed station. His claws clenched as he issued his next command. "Prepare the fleet. The humans want war. They shall have it." The tension had only begun to rise. Chapter 3. The war room was eerily quiet. Elise Carter stood before a holodeble, its shimmering surface casting faint light across the tense faces of her crew. A new fleet configuration dominated the display. Alien ships in an aggressive wedge formation, closing the gap toward Earth. Their speed left no doubt. The invaders meant to end the fight swiftly. "Estimated time to engagement?" Elise asked, her voice sharp but controlled. Lieutenant Pierce adjusted his headset, tapping through incoming data streams. 48 hours until they reach Earth's orbital defenses. Their supply lines are intact, Commander. They're moving with everything they've got. Elise's lips pressed into a thin line. The strike on Theta had bought them time, but failed to force a retreat. The aliens had recalibrated their tactics, abandoning caution in favor of raw power. Admiral Kwan's voice broke the silence. "We can't match their numbers. Earth's fleets are scattered and damaged. We need something unexpected, something that forces them to fight on our terms. Elise studied the holodeble, her mind racing. She highlighted the alien fleet's formation, zooming in on the center line. They're banking on overwhelming force, but their strength is also their weakness. If we can draw them into a bottleneck, divide their fleet, we stand a chance. How? Quan folded his arms, skepticism etched into his expression. A trap, Elise replied. We bait them into an asteroid field near Mars and use the environment to neutralize their numbers. But we'll need precise timing and misdirection to pull it off. Preparations began immediately. The crew worked in synchronized chaos, coordinating false signals and deploying stealth drones to mimic fleet movements. Diaz and Varga joined Elise in the strategy room, poring over schematics of the asteroid field. Those rocks are unstable, Diaz muttered, pointing at the hologram. A single misstep, and we're as dead as they are. That's why precision is critical, Elise said. We'll plant charges on key asteroids, creating a chain reaction that targets their largest ships. The rest of the fleet will be funneled into tight quarters, where our smaller strike teams can take them out piecemeal. Varga's brow furrowed as she examined the plan. It's risky as hell, but it could work. I'll prep the charges personally. Good, Elise replied. Because we won't get a second chance. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a sprawling graveyard of rock and ice lit by the faint glow of Mars in the distance. The Resolute entered the field cautiously, its sensors scanning for navigational hazards. Elise watched from the bridge, her jaw tight. Are the decoy signals in place? She asked. Pierce nodded. Drones are broadcasting false fleet activity near Jupiter. If the aliens take the bait, they'll redirect their main force toward this sector. They'll take the bait, Elise said, more to herself than anyone else. They have to. Hours ticked by in oppressive silence. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, tension thick enough to taste. Elise checked and rechecked the fleet's positioning, ensuring no detail was overlooked. Meanwhile, in the depths of the alien command ship, Overseer Zraltok studied the human transmissions. His clawed hand traced patterns across the holographic display, analyzing every false signal and misdirected broadcast. Primitive, he growled, his voice reverberating through the chamber. They think they can outmaneuver us with tricks. His lieutenant hesitated. Overseer, their movements suggest an ambush. Perhaps caution. Caution is for prey, Zraltok snapped. We are hunters. Mobilize the fleet. Crush them before they slink back into their hiding holes. The alien fleet shifted course, heading directly for the asteroid field. On board the Resolute, Elise's sensors lit up with the incoming signal. They've taken the bait, Pierce reported, his voice taut with urgency. Elise leaned forward. All ships, hold position. Wait for my command to engage. As the alien fleet entered the asteroid field, their formation began to falter. The dense clusters of rock forced them into narrower paths, limiting their ability to maneuver. Elise's hands tightened on the edge of the console. Varga, status on the charges? Charges are set, Varga replied. We're ready to light them up on your signal. Elise watched as the aliens advanced deeper into the trap. She could see their hesitation now, small deviations in their movements, as if they sensed danger but couldn't pinpoint its source. Wait, Elise said, holding her breath. The alien flagship moved closer to the trigger point, its massive bulk an irresistible target. Now! Elise shouted. The asteroid field erupted in chaos. Explosions rippled through the rocks, sending massive shards hurtling through space. Several alien ships disintegrated instantly, their shields overwhelmed by the sheer force of the debris. Hit confirmed, Varga called out, her voice filled with grim satisfaction. Strike teams, engage. Elise ordered. The smaller human ships emerged from their hiding spots, weaving through the debris with surgical precision. They struck vulnerable alien ships, exploiting the confusion to devastating effect. On the alien flagship, Zraltok roared in fury as his fleet fell into disarray. Fools! Regroup! Focus fire on their command vessel. But the chaos was too great. The asteroid field became a battleground of shifting hazards, each explosion cascading into another. On the bridge of the Resolute, Pierce's console flared with a new alert. "Commander, enemy reinforcements inbound. They're bypassing the asteroid field entirely." Elise's heart sank. The aliens had anticipated the trap, but only partially. Their reinforcements were closing in on the rear, threatening to encircle the human forces. "We're not done yet," Elise said, her mind racing. "Diaz, redirect the remaining drones." "Varga, can we use the debris to cover a retreat?" "Not for long," Varga replied, already calculating trajectories. Elise glanced at the tactical display, weighing their dwindling options. "Prepare for emergency extraction. We'll regroup at the next fallback point." As the crew scrambled to execute her orders, Elise stared at the wreckage outside. The trap had worked, but at a cost. The alien fleet was damaged, but they weren't defeated, and Earth's survival depended on what came next. The trap had been set, sprung, and barely escaped. But now, the humans would have to face an even greater threat. Chapter 4. The stars outside Earth's orbit glittered with a deceptive calm, but inside the command deck of the Resolute, tension gripped every crew member. Elise Carter stood, her gaze fixed on the war-torn space beyond. The trap had inflicted significant damage on the alien fleet, but it hadn't been enough to break their resolve. As their reinforcements arrived, the balance had shifted. "We've lost contact with the forward fleet," Pierce reported, his voice tight with concern. "The aliens are using some kind of jamming signal. They're adapting faster than we expected." Elise clenched her jaw. This was the moment. The humans had fought tooth and nail to slow down the alien advance, but now they were trapped in a pincer movement. There was no more room for hesitation. "We bought ourselves a little time," she said, turning to the tactical display. "But it's up to us to finish this. We're not going down without a fight." The crew exchanged glances, each member understanding the gravity of her words. This wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about surviving, about ensuring humanity had a future. "Commander, we have one chance," Admiral Kwan said, stepping forward. "The Resolute is still intact, but we're low on supplies and manpower. We'll have to hit them where it hurts the most. We have the element of surprise left. If we don't act now, it's over." Elise nodded, weighing the options. There was a narrow window for a final counteroffensive, a direct strike at the heart of the alien flagship, Zraltok's command ship. If they could disable its weapons systems, they might cripple the rest of the alien fleet. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered. "We're going in?" The Resolute maneuvered through the wreckage of the asteroid field, now little more than a series of floating debris and burning fragments. Elise's heart pounded in her chest as the ship's engines hummed beneath her feet. The plan was simple: strike fast, hit the flagship, and get out. But nothing about this felt simple. The crew moved with practiced urgency, coordinating with the remaining human ships. Each one was small, agile, and desperate. Elise couldn't help but feel the weight of their collective hope resting on her shoulders. She scanned the faces around her. The fear, the determination, the exhaustion. They were all in this together. Approaching the alien flagship, Pierce called from his station. "We're within range." Elise's breath caught in her throat. The alien flagship loomed ahead, an imposing structure of alien metal and energy. Its weapon systems were enormous, capable of vaporizing entire fleets with a single shot. Their plan hinged on taking it out before it could retaliate. "On my mark," Elise said, her voice steady despite the rising anxiety in her chest. 3, 2, 1. The Resolute and its strike teams surged forward, charging toward the flagship with all their remaining firepower. The fleet followed in a tight formation, every vessel synchronized as one. Elise watched as laser beams lit up the black expanse of space, a dazzling display of destruction. The Resolute's weapons fired first, powerful plasma blasts that struck the alien flagship's shields with a deafening roar. The flagship trembled, its massive form shaking under the assault. But its shields held. "We're not making a dent," Vargas shouted from the weapons station. "Shields are too strong." "Then we'll hit them harder," Elise snapped. "Pierce, divert power to the secondary weapons. We need to overload their shields before we can get through." The ship shuddered as Pierce worked his controls, redirecting energy into the secondary cannons. The Resolute fired again, this time with all its might. The blast struck the alien flagship's shields, causing a visible distortion as the energy began to destabilize. "Shields are weakening," Pierce said, eyes wide with urgency. "We have a few seconds. Give it everything you've got," Elise ordered. The next barrage hit with the force of a hammer. The flagship's shields flickered and then collapsed, exposing the massive hull beneath. Elise's heart raced. They had a moment. "Now's our chance," Varga shouted, her fingers dancing across her console as she launched the final strike. An EMP pulse designed to disable the alien flagship's power systems. The pulse collided with the flagship's core, and for a brief moment, everything went silent. Then, the explosion of energy was deafening, rippling through the ship's structure. The alien flagship systems faltered, its main guns going dark, its engines sputtering as the EMP pulse took full effect. Elise exhaled a sharp breath. "We've done it. We've crippled their flagship." But the relief was short-lived. A guttural roar echoed through space, and Zraltok's voice boomed over the comms. "Fools! You think you've won?" Elise's stomach dropped as the flagship's secondary fleet, previously hidden in the shadow of the main ship, descended from the upper atmosphere, unmasked and ready for battle. A second wave of alien ships, larger and more heavily armed, emerged from stealth mode, heading straight for the Resolute. "Brace for impact," Pierce shouted, slamming his hands against the console. The ship's shields flared as the first wave of fire impacted the Resolute. The hull groaned, straining under the pressure. The crew held their ground as the ship shuddered with each blast. "We're not done yet," Elise said through gritted teeth. "All hands, prepare for the final charge. We're taking them down, or we're not coming back." The Resolute continued its furious charge, plunging into the heart of the alien fleet. The battle raged, a fierce and brutal fight that pushed every human to their limits. But amidst the chaos, Elise found strength she didn't know she had. It was the final stand. In this last, desperate moment, humanity's will to survive burned brighter than the stars themselves.